Mysterious Lord Fan, Black Emperor's Way. The old days roared in the starry sky, and the apocalypse was about to come. The power of order, which could minimize the risk of losing control, became the target of the old days' struggle. However, what the ancients did not know was that the disorderly country, symbolizing order and distortion, was controlled by the young Hobart who had just crossed over and had a complex background. He joined the Tarot Order and began to construct the order of the human world, gradually gaining the power of order. Book Group Number 3732091003. Password. I am not Amon. Welcome everyone to join the group. Keywords of the novel. Mystery. The new Black Emperor comes with no pop-ups. Mystery. The new Black Emperor comes with no pop-ups. Mystery. The new Black Emperor comes with no pop-ups. Download the complete TXT. Mystery. The new Black Emperor comes with no pop-ups. Read the latest chapter. Chapter 1. Disordered Country. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 1. Disordered Country. Hobart Jeffrey was well aware that he had once again entered his dream. Not far away, there was a crooked castle almost covered in vegetation, and a beautiful but abandoned ancient town. Strangely, there are suns, clouds, and stars on the ground in the distance. In the sky, there is a vast forest, with huge trees hanging upside down like stalactites in caves. Between the sky and the ground, there are also towering mountains and a huge bell tower on the ground, as if someone had hung these views on a huge wall. Everything in front of me it's like the world is in a box. In the past month, Hobart often appeared in this dream, but the dream was too clear. After waking up, everything he saw in the dream was also remembered clearly. There is no one here. No, I can't say there is none. Hobart turned around and saw that the blurry figure was indeed not far behind him. Every time Hobart dreams, he encounters this figure because he is too blurry to see his appearance clearly. He can only be seen with his mouth open, as if shouting something. Sometimes you can hear his screams in your dreams, sometimes you can't hear them. If you can't hear it, it's really thank goodness, because his screams make Hobart's entire brain seem to boil, and at the same time, a surge of madness seems to be surging out of his body. Whenever this happens, Hobart wakes up from his dream and strives to fight against the madness within his body. Hobart once speculated that the figure might be a resident of this place, and tried to communicate effectively with the other party, but all attempts at communication were unsuccessful without exception. So when Hobart saw the figure, he could only choose to run away quickly. The figure drifted faster than Hobart's running speed and quickly caught up. Hobart smiled bitterly, but the other person's roar still penetrated his eardrums. The painful sensation of brain churning reappeared, and just as Hobart gritted his teeth to prepare for the moment of awakening, he actually understood the other person's shouting. That disorderly country. That disorderly country. Has the other party been shouting, the country of disorder? The memories buried deep in Hobart's mind are awakened, and that disorderly country is one of the origins. Hobart looked at everything around him in shock. This is the land of chaos. Shouldn't it be in the Western continent? His Hobart woke up from his dream and suddenly sat up from the bed. A red moon hung in the night sky outside the window, and he could hear the sound of insects chirping and the gentle breeze brushing against the leaves. It seemed like a peaceful night no matter what. Breathing heavily, Hobart realized that he had already sweated a cold sweat, and then he realized that he seemed to have lost a very important memory. In his dream, he seemed to have understood where the dream world was, but why couldn't he remember it? This is not the first time I have felt this way. Hobart traveled to this world a month ago. Before his time traveling, he was an ordinary working dog in China. He liked to read novels when he had time, so he soon discovered that this was the world of the Lord of Secrets. His kingdom is called Rune, and his city is the capital city of Beckland. The current king is George III. Of course, more importantly, after traveling, Hobart discovered that he possessed certain extraordinary traits, such as his eloquence seeming to improve significantly, and his family and friends becoming more easily convinced. But strangely, Hobart inherited almost all of his memories from the original owner, but the original owner did not take any potions or come into contact with items with obvious extraordinary characteristics. Since Hobart traveled here, he has been dreaming of that eerie scene every 2 or 3 days, and now he almost dreams about it once a day. This matter has been troubling Hobart, and he really can't figure out where the extraordinary traits that suddenly appear on him come from. This is the first strange thing after the journey, and the second strange thing is the problem of Hobart's amnesia. He has watched The Lord of Secrets several times and is familiar with the plot of the first few volumes, but the plot of the latter few volumes only has a vague concept. Hobart may have realized that the loss of these memories is a form of self-protection, and he also remembers that if his level is too low, some mystical knowledge will be contaminated as long as he knows it. But what he couldn't understand was why he lost these memories. These thoughts that Hobart had awakened from his dreams were only fleeting, followed by a severe headache, as if someone was stirring his mind with a knife. At the same time, Hobart felt like there was a crazy monster inside him, about to tear open his body and rush out. The madness this time was more severe than ever before. Hobart fell to the ground, trembling all over, wanting to scream wildly, wanting to smash everything in the room, wanting to kill everyone in this house. The only remaining reason stopped Hobart's crazy thoughts, and he worked hard to suppress the pain and madness. Using the Hermetic language learned by the original owner from grammar school, he tried to pronounce himself clearly and accurately. Fools who do not belong to this era, you are the mysterious master on the mist, you are the yellow and black king in charge of good luck. I pray for your help. I pray for your favor. I beg you to help me suppress endless madness. This is the only solution that Hobart came up with. Although he guessed that his adoptive father was an extraordinary person, he never showed any extraordinary abilities or revealed any knowledge about mysticism, so Hobart did not dare to reveal his position. Compared to his adoptive father, Hobart was more willing to trust Klein, who was also a traveler. At least he knew that this fool was compassionate and kind-hearted. The current date is early July 1349, and Hobart probably remembers that Klein should have already crossed over and forgotten where it was. In short, it was a magical haze that opened the tarot order. This is not the first time he has recited the honorific name of a fool, and he has not received a response before. In theory, Mr. Ko should have already examined himself. He hopes to catch Klein's attention this time, and if he continues like this, he thinks he will really go crazy. Hobart recited the name of the fool 7 or 8 times, and his rationality gradually couldn't suppress his inner madness. Just as the madness on his body was about to completely spiral out of control, he suddenly felt like he was being pulled by something, passing through a layer of gray-white mist, and arriving at a grand hall. The madness disappeared without a trace in an instant, and Hobart breathed a long sigh of relief. At this moment, Hobart was sitting at an ancient and mottled bronze long table, and at the end of the table, there was also a mysterious and powerful blurred figure sitting. Hobart thought to himself, Mr. Ko, you finally took action. Many book enthusiasts feel that a stranger like Clara is a bit abnormal when they see her here. After all, Ko is always a very cautious person. End of this chapter. 2. Chapter 2 Emperor Cards. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 2 Emperor Cards. In the Source Castle, Hobart restored the relevant memories of the Land of Disorder, and now he can be certain that his amnesia is a form of protection for himself. Only in the source material can pollution from the top of the sequence or external gods be blocked, in order to restore those memories. Then Hobart realized that he should have a connection with the Land of Chaos similar to that between Klein and the Source Castle. But without comparison, there is no harm. Just look at their Source Castle, it can make Klein, who has just crossed, immediately initiate a 2 or 5 child meeting. Cough, immediately initiate the tarot meeting. But the disorderly country, bound to oneself is a pit. Hobart gave a bitter smile in his heart before getting up and saying, Great and mysterious fool, thank you for your help. If it weren't for Mr. Ko's timely action, Hobart would probably have gone crazy like this. Even if he was lucky, he would have gone crazy for a few hours. Thinking of my adoptive mother, sister, and younger brother all sleeping at this moment, while my adoptive father went on a business trip half a month ago and was not at home, almost no one could stop me from going crazy. The consequences of falling into madness are unimaginable. Klein ignored Hobart's gratitude and seemed to be saying, "This is a trivial matter." He asked in a mysterious and heavy voice, "Where did you know my name?" At this moment, Klein was also a bit confused. He had only designed his three-part honorific name a week ago. After he told Justice and Hangman the honorific name in the mist, he was harassed by the young man in front of him every day. The key is that every time this young man praises the reputation of the fool, he wakes up Klein in the late night. Of course, what puzzled Klein the most was where the other party learned the name of the fool, which made his back feel chilly and dangerous. If it weren't for Klein seeing signs of this young man losing control today, he wouldn't have brought such a big uncertainty factor to the other party's face. Regarding this question, Hobart had already come up with an answer. "Dear fool, I have been showing signs of madness since a month ago. I prayed for the help of the gods, but did not receive a response. Just when I was most helpless, a mist appeared in my mind and I heard your name. This answer is very unscientific, but is it a mysterious world? Unscientific is the norm." Klein's sense of confusion became even more severe, and he even suspected that the Foghere had acted recklessly and leaked his respected name. Hobart skipped the topic and said, "I don't know how to thank you for your help." "You don't need to thank me. Klein has already been exposed to a lot of mystical knowledge. He can't say he believes Hobart's explanation, but he can't say he doesn't believe it." Hobart asked again, "Respected fool, how can I get rid of my crazy fate?" After asking, he regretted it a bit. The current Mr. Fool doesn't have as much knowledge of mysticism as he does. How much would such a question embarrass the fool? So Hobart followed closely and said, "What kind of sacrifice do I have to make to get rid of my crazy fate?" "I am a fool who enjoys equivalent exchange and doesn't need your sacrifice," Klein said easily. "It seems like you haven't taken any potion. Did you gradually become crazy after coming into contact with something extraordinary?" On this gray mist, Klein could use his spiritual vision to distinguish whether a person had taken magic potions. The young man in front of him had a darker aura than a normal person, but it was certain that he was not an extraordinary person. So there are only two reasons why ordinary people can lose control. One is that they were born with half a sequence 9, and the other is that the other person accidentally came into contact with an extraordinary event or item, which was contaminated by the seal. If it is half a sequence 9 from birth, then this young person is either already crazy or not too influenced by extraordinary traits. Just like a few days ago when he followed old Neil to the black market and encountered the monster Ademasol at the Dragon Bar, it was an example of his high spirituality that made it impossible to control half of the extraordinary traits in his body's sequence 9. So there is only one answer, it must be that the other party has come into contact with a seal or extraordinary item, which is why such symptoms occur. "That's exactly where I'm puzzled," Hobart replied. "I haven't taken any potions, nor have I come into contact with. At least I don't think I've come into contact with any extraordinary objects. As for the crazy phenomenon that only began to appear after crossing the river, it cannot be revealed to Klein yet." The fool remained silent for a few seconds and said, "There are two people who are similar to you, and I have pulled them into this place for other reasons. They hoped that I could hold regular gatherings for formula trading, material trading, message exchange, and task delegation, and I agreed to them. You are a person who understands mystical knowledge. You can use your knowledge to engage in equivalent transactions with me or others. Your questions will be answered here, and your problems will also be solved." Hobart said, "It's my honor." The fool said, "Every Monday, at 3 p.m., eliminate distractions." He said, "They have decided to use the name of the tarot card as their respective code, and you can also choose a code for yourself." A set of tarot cards appeared in front of Hobart, and his mood became somewhat complicated. Firstly, he did not expect to join the tarot club in this way and enter the extraordinary world in this way. And all of this is inevitable, because he was bound to the disorderly country at the beginning of his arrival in this world. Why did the disorderly country appear on the northern continent? Has the seal of the Heavenly Lord weakened to this extent? Or rather, which deity's plan is this? To investigate these, one must enter an extraordinary world, so joining an extraordinary world is inevitable. Let fate determine my code name. Hobart shuffled his cards and drew a card. Emperor. This code name is so high-profile. The symbol on the chair behind Hobart is awakened, which is an abstract throne pattern with a symbol representing chaos and distortion. The Fool declared, "Your code name is Emperor. Pay attention to the gathering time and go back." After returning Hobart to the Red Stars, Klein did not leave immediately and did divination to confirm that the Emperor was not in danger. It is unusual for the Emperor, who is not an extraordinary person, to know a lot about extraordinary people. Let's observe first, Klein thought. Anyway, no one can harm me above this mist. Then he also left the mist, and tomorrow Mr. Fool still has to go to work, so he needs to hurry up and catch some sleep. On the other hand, after returning to his body, Hobart found himself lying on the ground in a twisted posture. His pajamas were soaked with sweat, his hair was soaked with sweat, and he seemed to have taken a shower in the sweat. Hobart was once again grateful that he knew the existence of the Fool. It's already dawn outside, and Hobart is completely sleepless. Today is Monday, and he will be attending the tarot meeting for the first time in the afternoon. New book release, seeking collection, seeking recommendation tickets. This is the fourth book by the author June, and the reputation is guaranteed. You can rest assured to enter the pit. End of this chapter. Chapter 3. New members. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 3. New members. In the early morning, Hobart left his room and arrived at the restaurant on the first floor. His sister and brother were already having breakfast. My foster father, Kristen Jeffrey, is a brigadier general, but he doesn't seem to be very valued. However, even if he is no longer highly valued, the brigadier general is still a senior general and a high-ranking figure in Beckland, with a spacious two-story villa and a considerable garden in Queens. In addition, his adopted son Hobart, his daughter Donna, who is 1 year younger than Hobart, and his son Tyron, who is 3 years younger than Hobart, are all able to attend top-notch public primary and secondary schools in Beckland, and can easily be admitted to the University of Beckland, known as the First University of Wayne. However, compared to the residences and treatment enjoyed by those nobles, it is still far inferior. Hobart judged that his adoptive father, Christine, was not highly valued because his family's financial situation was not very wealthy. He remembered that Emilius, who was also a general, seemed to be very wealthy. However, Hobart has only saved £15 of private money recently, probably not as much as Miss Justice's pocket money. However, compared to Mr. Ku, Hobart's start was much better. He remembered that Mr. Ku's start-up capital seemed to be only around £1, which also included the meal expenses of their siblings. Donna, with some naturally curled blonde hair, stood guard over the milk and sweet bread rolls in front of her and said, "Hobart, your spirits don't seem to be very good." Hobart sat at the dining table and casually said, "I had insomnia last night." The maid served Hobart breakfast, with salad and fried eggs, which was very sumptuous. Hobart glanced at the red tea ceremony and said, "Let me have a glass of milk instead." Having traveled for so long, he still feels a bit uncomfortable drinking tea and coffee in the morning. But being served breakfast, he quickly got used to it. Just as the three of them were about to finish breakfast, Hobart's foster mother, Monisa, appeared on the second floor and said, "Hobart, come home early this afternoon. Your father came back today and he said he has something important to talk to you about." Hobart stood up and said, "Okay, mother." Donna said happily, "Dad is coming back today. I don't know what gift he brought me. Oh dear, you still have hope for your father's gift. Monisa helped her forehead. Believe me, I've been married to your father for so many years and haven't received a satisfactory gift. Donna smiled and said, that's because Dad doesn't have a good personal servant. In the chat, the three siblings finished breakfast and then went back to change their clothes, bring their study supplies, and take the family carriage to their respective schools. Hobart studied law at the University of Beckland. In the afternoon, he secretly skipped class and found a remote equipment room to prepare for the upcoming tarot meeting. At 3 o'clock, Hobart seemed to suddenly enter a dense gray-white mist, and then he outlined the grand hall and bronze long table in front of him. Miss Justice Audrey saluted and said, "Good afternoon, Mr. Fool. Unfortunately, there is no good wine here. Otherwise, I would have cheered you to the success of your attempt." She and the hanging man just attempted to use the three-part form of the Fool name to pray to Mr. Fool last week, and they both received a response from the Fool. This once again refreshed their understanding of the power of fools, but what they didn't know was that a new member repeatedly used a three-paragraph honorific name, which disturbed the Fool's good sleep. The pause in Justice was due to the discovery of a new member, so she habitually began to observe while speaking. The new member is a young male who looks very energetic and should be a young person who enjoys sports. He looked very calm, without the nervousness and surprise he had when he first came to tarot. His clothes were a bit blurry, but it was probably noticeable that the ingredients were exquisite, the styles were novel, and there was a clear One Kingdom style. In summary, Justice suggests that he was born into the upper echelons of Rune society and is likely to have lived in Beckland. Although young, he appears calm and composed. The living environment of Justice is a whole level superior to that of Hobart. She and her two brothers both invite teachers to teach at home, without having to attend grammar school or university. Only the illegitimate children of Count Hall, or the children of family members who have not inherited the title, will enjoy the same level of education as Hobart. It was precisely because of this that she was unable to immediately guess that Hobart was a college student. On the other side of the long table, the upside-down hanging man Alger also praised Mr. Fool, saying, "Your strength far exceeds our imagination." He also saw the new members, which made his eyebrows furrow. Although Mr. Fool is very powerful, he should be notified of his relationship with Justice before joining the new members. If it weren't for just witnessing the power of the Fool, he would definitely have protested. The Fool said, "Very well, this indicates that we are on an effective path. In the future, if you have something that you cannot leave on Monday afternoon, hold a ceremony in advance and let me know." He said again, "As you can see, tarot will have new members." Then the Fool began to introduce, "This is Miss Justice, this is Mr. Hangman, and the new member is Mr. Emperor." "Good afternoon, Mr. Emperor." Justice greeted with a smile. This emperor is likely to be a member of the upper-class society of Luan, which makes Justice somewhat affectionate towards him. "Good afternoon," Hobart said, "it's an honor to attend your party." The person hanging upside down didn't say hello, just observed Hobart for a while. The gathering officially began, and Justice first gave the Fool a page of Russell the Great's diary. She kindly reminded Hobart, the notes written with special symbols left by Russell the Great turned out to be his diary. "Mr. Fool is very interested in these diaries, and you can collect those diaries to trade with him." Hobart politely said, "Thank you for your reminder." He thought to himself, "I still know this, simplified Chinese. But then again, Justice is truly heartwarming." Just as he thought of this, he realized that the atmosphere in the main hall was a bit off. Justice, Hanging Man, and even Fool were all staring at him tightly, as if treating him like a monster. Oh no! Hobart realized later that when he heard the diary of Emperor Russell the Great, I didn't show enough surprise, even if it was a slight surprise. What should we do now? Should we explain it quickly or pretend that the back end is very hard? Quickly, he realized that whether he explained or not, the ultimate outcome seemed to be the same. His identity would appear mysterious. Then let's not explain, let them brainstorm on their own. End of this chapter. Chapter 4. Misfortune is the norm of an extraordinary world. You are listening at novel full.audio. This translator is experiencing an error, please try another translator. Chapter 5. Curses in Bloodline. You are listening at novel full.audio. Chapter 5 Curses in Bloodline. Fool, Klein grinned bitterly. I really don't know, but it's okay not to know. After all, this is a mysterious and unpredictable world, and talking about certain people or things can also lead to disasters. Justice, Audrey. So terrible, is this an extraordinary world? Talking about some people can bring disaster. Hanging Man, Alger. The Emperor's extraordinary knowledge seems to be very advanced. Fortunately, I did not show any disrespect towards him before. Hobart continued. Later, during the reign of the fourth Emperor, the Antigonus family became a large family due to their support for the rule of the Blood Emperor. However, after the fall of the Blood Emperor, Antigonus was pursued by the gods and for some reason lost control, and the kingdom he established was also destroyed. There are also rumors that Antigonus is still sleeping in the palace of Hornaches, but no one can confirm it. Later on, there was no news about the Antigonus family. I believe that even if their descendants escaped the pursuit of the gods, they were already some collateral members and could not regain their former glory. The other three fell into varying degrees of silence, and the so-called being chased by the gods shocked them. Although they all believed in the existence of the gods, when they heard their deeds, they still had the urge to cover their ears. Klein also noticed that Hobart said Antigonus was pursued by the gods, rather than the Antigonus family being pursued. Is it possible that the person who founded the Antigonus family is the same person who was pursued by the gods? As for the possibility that Antigonus may still be sleeping in Hornache's palace, this is very valuable information for Klein, almost explaining the origin of his whispers when he became an extraordinary. Hobart felt a bit helpless when he saw everyone silent. He had already spoken very carefully. Not only did he not mention the two angelic kings Adam and Ammon, but also did not say that Antigonus was a descendant of the ancient gods and the little brother of the goddess of the night. He never expected that even the information processed by himself would still shock everyone so much. The Hanging Man even doubted whether the Emperor was also a awakening evil god like Mr. Fool. How else would he know so much hidden information? So he asked with the idea of giving it a try, Mr. Emperor, may I ask where else can I get the potion recipe for the wind dependent besides at the Storm Church? What kind of compensation should I pay for the relevant information? I haven't figured out the exact compensation yet. I'll owe it to you for now, and when I need it, I'll ask for it from you. Hobart didn't plan to give the Hanging Man a gift. As for the value of my information, I can ask Mr. Fool to testify. The Hanging Man was taken aback for a moment, but he didn't expect that the Emperor really knew other ways to obtain the sailor magic potion. No problem. Hobart asked, have you ever heard of the elves? I've heard of it, said the Hanging Man, but that's already a race that was destroyed a long time ago. Yes, the elf race no longer exists, said Hobart. But don't underestimate ancient mythological creatures. Perhaps some of their strong ones can still use some extraordinary items to preserve their will. Of course, I don't recommend you to search for such extraordinary items because they are very dangerous. I think you should have some understanding that the extraordinary path mastered by the elf race is the same as yours. Also, as far as I know, there are many relics of the elf tribe on the sea, and I think you should be able to find what you want there. The person hanging upside down fell into silence, and it must be said that Hobart provided him with a new and feasible idea. The Fool also fell into contemplation, realizing that many hidden extraordinary events had occurred in the distant second and third eras, to the extent that the present era is still influenced by those extraordinary events. Justice, on the other hand, couldn't contain her curiosity and wanted to learn about information about ancient mythological creatures. However, Hobart had just given her a meeting gift and she felt embarrassed to continue asking. After more than 10 seconds, the hanging man finally said, "Thank you for your answer. I will pay you an equivalent reward in the future." Next came the stage of exchanging information, and Hobart sat in a chair in silence until the fool announced the end of the party. Returning to reality, Hobart recalled the party just now, and Mr. Coe provided him with a good idea. At this moment, he suddenly realized that as long as he tried to mix with the protagonist as much as possible, it would definitely be beneficial. Who would give them a halo? After class in the afternoon, Hobart usually plays cricket with his classmates for 1 or 2 hours, or practices fencing together. When it's hot, he also goes swimming. Hobart has lamented more than once that in an era without the internet, college students tend to have healthier arrangements for their spare time. But today, due to his mother's advice, Hobart took a taxi home after school. When he first crossed over, following the principle of saving a little bit, Hobart took a public carriage home for several consecutive days. After all, it only cost 6 pence, while renting a carriage required between 2 and 3 souls, depending on the level of the carriage. But after learning about this, the foster mother harshly criticized Hobart, because Hobart's behavior would make neighbors or Hobart's classmates think that Jeffrey's family was going bankrupt. Or it may make others think that the Jeffrey family is too harsh on their adopted son. Hobart had no choice but to conform to the values of this world and bury the concept of diligence, thrift deep in his heart. As soon as he entered the courtyard, the butler took Hobart's backpack and said, "Master Hobart, please come to the study and have a conversation." Okay, Hobart and the butler arrived at the door of the study. The butler knocked on the door in front and gave a briefing. After obtaining permission from his foster father Kristen, Hobart opened the door and saw his foster father sitting behind his desk. He looked like he was only in his 30s, without a beard. Even though he was smiling, his whole body still exuded a strong sense of authority. Before Hobart's journey, there was some distance between him and his foster parents, but after the journey, this distance became even greater. Hobart has always been called father and mother, rather than father and mother like Donna and Tyrone. Kristen pointed to the chair across from the desk and said, "Sit down." Hobart felt very willing to obey his adoptive father's orders, which was also why he believed his adoptive father was extraordinary. Kristen asked, "I heard you've been feeling restless lately, and you've been experiencing some insomnia. You even show some crazy expressions when you're not careful." Hobart was taken aback and said, "I have tried my best to hide my inner madness." "Some things can't be hidden if you want to," Christine sighed. "We haven't talked about your biological father for a long time, have we?" Yes, Hobart didn't expect that his adoptive father would take the initiative to talk about his biological parents, which saved him the trouble of finding a topic to inquire about. Kristen said, "There is a curse in your family's bloodline. Book group number 373209103 password. I am not Amon. Welcome everyone to join the group." End of this chapter. 6, Chapter 6. Open a single chapter and have a chat. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 6. Open a single chapter chat. Hello everyone, thank you for reading this book. At the beginning of the book, the author would like to introduce himself and also provide a general idea of the book. The author has already written 2 successful works before. Well, it can only be said that there is no street fighting, and the author's level is about to reach level 4. I hope everyone knows that the author has completed the work and is also a serious author who takes writing seriously. Everyone can rest assured to fall into the trap. Although the author June's level is limited, he is willing to do his best to write this book well. If there are any shortcomings, please forgive me. The author June loves the book Secrets very much, and just completed 3 screenings before the new year. At that time, he had the idea of writing a fan book, Secrets. But which path to choose? The path of a fortune teller cannot be chosen, as it would conflict with the approach of a general practitioner. The night goddess has always been a positive image, although she has also planned and participated in many conspiracies, and is the true god of the sleepless path. Unless there is a divine battle and the goddess falls, this path is difficult to stand out. The sailor, audience, reader, singer, secret prayer person and other channels are equally awkward as the sleepless channel, which was a problem encountered by Emperor Russell the Great. So only by choosing a path without a true God can there be room for development. The assassin route is definitely not an option, as it will turn into a woman later on, which may be more awkward and awkward. As for the hunter route, well, it's easy to die in the provocateur level. We should also try to avoid using methods such as mother and moon that have been contaminated by external gods. Finally, after wandering around, only the lawyer or arbitrator approach is the most suitable. However, considering that Hugh is already an arbitrator, the protagonist has to choose lawyer. This way, after the protagonist becomes an old friend, Miss Hugh can still be promoted to sequence 1. But a new question arises. How can one be promoted to the rank of Black Emperor without harming Emperor Russell? Fortunately, by the end of the first installment of Secrets, Kuzong had become half of the old days, and he had gained the wrong authority in Amon's hands, which gave him a lot of room for maneuver. But the specific method of operation is to first sell the key O.D. There should be some old readers from the first 2 books to support the audience. Old readers must know that the author's level may be limited, but writing fan fiction works will not be embarrassing. This is because the author respects the original work enough and is willing to patiently create new works based on it. As for updates, it is customary to have 2 daily updates before listing, due to waiting for recommendations, and 3 daily updates after listing. Occasionally, there will be additional updates. Once a certain number of monthly tickets, recommendation tickets, and rewards are received, there will be additional updates. Additionally, if readers have made contributions to this book, they will also be thanked. In the past 2 years, even in the case of Yang, the author has not stopped updating, and updates are guaranteed. If there are more chapters every day, the author can still write them, but it is easy to encounter hydrological phenomena, which is a common problem in many fan works. Although the author is not a well-known writer, I am also a reader, so I am very unwilling to do so. I will try to ensure quality in the middle and later stages. Finally, I would like to thank Brother Octopus for lending him the opportunity. Thank you to all readers, your comments, votes, and tips are all ways to motivate the author. End of this chapter. Chapter 7. Lawyer Approach. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 7 Lawyer Pathways. Hobart's brow furrowed, he didn't expect to confirm Mr. K's speculation so quickly. You don't seem shocked. Christine smiled. Yes, Hobart admitted, I was very interested in mysticism when I was in high school. About a month ago, I suddenly felt an indescribable sense of madness in my body, which was becoming increasingly severe, much like the curse depicted in mysticism. He paused and then said, I was quite surprised to hear you say that. So, some mystical knowledge may not be legends or shadows, but actually exist. Kristen said seriously, yes, there is indeed an extraordinary world behind the surface of the entire world. He said, we need to have a heart-to-heart conversation. Where do we start? Well, let's start with your biological father. I should have told you before that your biological father is my best friend. He is an outstanding person who has reached heights that many people cannot reach. He is also the most likely person to end the curse in your family's bloodline. Unfortunately, he still failed, Kristen said with a gloomy expression. Family. Hobart captured a crucial piece of information that he had never associated himself with any family before. After all, he had never seen any blood relatives of his own. Is it possible that he is the only one left in the family? Also, his family doesn't know if it's an extraordinary family. Kristen continued, I fought alongside your father Rex at West Byron, and we talked about everything at that time. He told me about the curse in your family's bloodline, and he also told me that he didn't intend to continue this cursed bloodline. But later he met your mother, and they were very loving. With your mother's persistence, perhaps it was fate that arranged for you to be born. Generally speaking, the curse in your family's bloodline will be awakened on your 12th birthday, but your mother helped you seal it and bought you 10 years of time. She hopes you have a carefree youth, the opportunity to enjoy the beauty of life, the opportunity to fall in love and kiss girls of the same age, and not always keep a straight face like your father. So when she left, she made me swear to tell you a part of the truth when the curse was awakened. Hobart felt a strong sense of joy and sadness filling his heart. He knew that it was not his mother, and even the memories of the original owner did not have a mother's shadow. However, he was still deeply moved by maternal love. Time flies so fast, Kristen sighed. That was already 20 years ago. He continued, when you were first born, Rex's situation was already very pessimistic. At the last moment of his life, he was still worried about how you would fight against the curse in your bloodline in the future. He wants you to choose for yourself. One path is still to be an ordinary person, but you will be in a semi-crazy state. However, your biological father has left you enough wealth, and I will send you to a farm in the suburbs to help you select loyal servants. Rex made a deal with the School of Life before his death. After the age of 40.5, you will have enough luck to gradually awaken from a semi-crazy state, and you can enjoy the rest of your life as an ordinary person. Another path is to become an extraordinary, and once you become an extraordinary in sequence 9, your crazy state will be greatly reduced. But Rex made me remind you that first, you can only choose the magic potion of the lawyer's path, because when your family's curse is awakened, it will make you a half-sequence of the lawyer's path. Secondly, when you become an extraordinary or promoted for 6 months, your madness will gradually increase. At that time, magic potions will be like opium to you. Whether you have digested the previous magic potions or not, you will be eager to be promoted. Alternatively, you can choose not to be promoted and confront endless madness, but this can also make your emotions very unstable, and the vast majority of your family members will die in the process of losing control. Kristen said, "You can think about it first, there's no need to rush to give me an answer. Oh, by the way, I also want to remind you that I only have the lawyer's access to the potion formulas for sequence 9 and sequence 8. Hobart was taken aback and said, "Didn't my father leave behind a higher order potion formula?" "No, this is a test Rex has given you," Kristen said. "Perhaps your father would prefer you to be an ordinary person." Hobart twitched his lips. Everyone else is a pit father, the original owner's father is a professional pit son. Then he thought that his code name in the Tarot Society was Emperor, and the true god of the lawyer's path seemed to be the Black Emperor. Is this a coincidence? This is an extraordinary world, how could there be such a coincidence? After a moment of contemplation, Hobart said, "Actually, there's no need to think about it. I can't waste my best years in a crazy state. Of course, it is also because dear Mr. Fool will receive the Black Emperor card of the Blasphemy card in 6 months. As long as you trade with the Fool, you can obtain the magic potion formula in the future." Kristen said, "I suggest you consider that there are people everywhere in this world who haven't grasped their best years, and they still live well." Hobart shook his head and said, "I still prefer to control my destiny in my own hands, rather than handing it over to enough luck. Father, please give me the potion of sequence 9. I will continue the family's business, and the day I become strong enough, I will be able to eliminate the curse in my bloodline." Kristen laughed heartily and said, "Rex should be very pleased to see this scene." He said, "I respect your choice." He took out a piece of parchment from the drawer and got up to go to the square cabinet in front of the bookshelf. Open the cabinet door, there is a set of beakers and many extraordinary materials stored in small bottles or jars inside. Kristen placed parchment on the cabinet and took out a beaker to start mixing potions. He didn't let Hobart avoid it, so Hobart stepped forward and glanced at the content on the parchment. As Hobart guessed, it was the lawyer's potion recipe. Main material: an eye of a fearsome demon worm, a fruit of a twinkle tree. Auxiliary materials: a black iris flower, 6 leaves of a monkey-faced orchid, 8 g of black heartgrass juice, and 120 g of white wine. After reading the recipe, Hobart was taken aback and didn't expect that the potion recipe still needed wine. His thoughts diverged and he said, "It seems that people with alcohol allergies cannot be lawyers." At this moment, he was both excited and nervous, so he used his wild thoughts as an outlet. Kristen first added auxiliary materials to the beaker, then used tweezers to insert a black eyeball that was already lifeless and frightening, into the beaker. Finally, there was a fruit that looked like a peeled walnut. After adding all the materials to the beaker, without stirring, all the extraordinary materials instantly melt. After the beaker emits a slight black and psychedelic mist, the dark black liquid magic potion is prepared. Kristen pushed in front of Hobart and said, "This is the potion of sequence 9, lawyer. Thank you for the 100-point reward from UJ." End of this chapter. Chapter 8. The Throne of a Disordered Country. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 8. The Throne of a Disordered Country. Kristen looked at the dark black potion and finally reminded, "You still have one last chance to repent. Drinking it will make you an extraordinary person, and from then on, you will completely bid farewell to the life of ordinary people." Hobart picked up the beaker and said, "While I haven't lost the courage to move forward." He drank the potion in one gulp, and as soon as the dark black potion entered his stomach, Hobart couldn't help but tremble. For a moment, the world in front of him seemed to distort. At the same time, there were intermittent whispers in Hobart's ear, which were very vague and he couldn't even hear what was being said. He soon realized that in previous eras, only Solomon had succeeded in being promoted to the Black Emperor, but he fell in the Battle of the Four Emperors. Later, due to Russell becoming the new Black Emperor, he completely lost the possibility of rebirth. So Solomon had almost no influence on the lower-level extraordinary beings in the same sequence, while Russell's current state was very bad, and Hobart couldn't remember why it was so bad. It seemed that he knew the Emperor's state would be contaminated, and in any case, the Emperor couldn't influence the lower-level extraordinary beings in the same sequence at this time. Because there are no existing true gods or high-order individuals in the lawyer pathway, the extraordinary individuals in this pathway will not hear obvious whispers when promoted. Then Hobart saw a wooden board on the bookshelf with two small cracks, and a small dent on the outer shell of a book. Based on the phenomena observed, Hobart analyzed that the bookshelf in front of him should start to damage from that wooden board, and the book should start to damage from that small dent. This is the flaw in bookshelves and books. But then, this strange vision disappeared, and the involuntary trembling sensation also disappeared. Kristen saw that Hobart's condition had stabilized, so she poured him and herself a glass of the white wine they had just used. Although mastering the sequence 9 potion is not difficult, congratulations, she said, "Thank you." Hobart took the glass and touched it with Kristen, both of whom drank in one gulp. Kristen put away the potion recipe and the two of them sat back at their desks. Kristen began to explain the main abilities of a lawyer. "I heard your father talk about how lawyers can find things in front of them or the weaknesses of their opponents from the information they see and hear. But when you are in battle, you should be cautious because most enemies are also aware of their weaknesses, so they may have ways to protect their weaknesses. In addition, your eloquence will become very good, and you can also distort others' simple thoughts, but it is best to use it when the opponent is not on guard." He spread out his hand and said, "That's all I know. You need to explore other abilities and precautions yourself." Then Kristen began teaching Hobart how to turn on and off his spiritual vision, but the lawyer's spiritual vision could not see a person's ether body and spiritual body, and could only see the scenery in front of him or the obvious flaws in the person. But when Hobart examined Kristen with his spiritual vision, he couldn't find any weaknesses in him. Kristen smiled and said, "Remember, when you can't see any flaws in someone, it often means that the person in front of you is invincible right now." Hobart was taken aback, boasting about himself as fresh and refined. Immediately after, he realized that Kristen was likely a strong member of the mid-sequence. Kristen still talked about some extraordinary knowledge such as role-playing, and finally said, I will arrange for you to work as a legal assistant at a law firm the day after tomorrow or Thursday. I hope you can find the elements of being a lawyer there. It wasn't until the end of the conversation that Hobart had the opportunity to ask, who cursed my family, or rather the Heller family. Hobart's biological father's full name is Rex Heller. After Kristen adopted Hobart, he took his adoptive father's surname. Kristen seemed to recall something from the past, and after half a minute, she said, I promised Rex that I would only tell you all the truth after you fully mastered the potion of sequence 8. Oh, it's all the truth I know. At that time, you will face another choice, and the less you know before that, the better. Hobart nodded and said, okay. Since the other party doesn't mention it, he plans to use his biological father's information to investigate on his own after familiarizing himself with the lawyer's abilities. At this point in the conversation, as Hobart closed the door to his study, he saw Kristen sitting behind his desk, seemingly lost in memories, lost in thought. After leaving the study, Hobart thought of a question. How did Kristen know there were signs of losing control? He has been on a business trip for over half a month, and before his trip, Hobart's sense of madness was not so strong that no one noticed anything unusual. It must have been after Kristen went on a business trip that someone discovered something unusual about Hobart and informed Kristen. Quickly, Hobart thought of two possibilities. One was his foster mother, Monisa, and the other was the butler, Walker. However, Hobart's speculation has come to an end. Continuing to speculate is not very interesting, and there is no need to verify it. Just be clear in your mind. At dinner time, Kristen returned to her usual state, chatting and laughing with her family, and occasionally fighting with her daughter. The atmosphere in this family is still very good, except for Hobart, who feels somewhat estranged and rarely speaks at the dining table. After dinner, Hobart read for a while and soon became so tired that he couldn't open his eyes. He didn't sleep well yesterday, and today he is attending a tarot meeting and taking potions, which has left him physically and mentally exhausted. Unconsciously, Hobart entered the land of chaos again in his dream. The difference is that before, he always appeared at the foot of the ancient village in the disorderly country, but now he appears at the top of the mountain. Here is a chair made of both stone and jade, standing in the grass with some moss growing on it. It seems to be part of a mountain. On the front of the chair, there is a huge pool of water. The water in the pool is pitch black, but strangely, you can see the rocks at the bottom of the lake. In the pitch black water, countless white star-like clusters of light flickered, drifting slowly like jellyfish, appearing to be alive. Hobart sat thoughtfully on the stone chair, feeling for a moment that he had established a special connection with the disorderly country. At this moment, he saw the blurry figure that had been shouting after him before drifting towards him. The figure seemed to be clearer and could clearly see that the other person was a man. Hobart waved his hand towards the black pool, and the blurry figure was pushed into the pool by him. The figure struggled in the pool, but could not come out. Hobart immediately understood that he had become an extraordinary person and had a certain degree of control over the disorderly country. End of this chapter. Chapter 9. Exploration of the disordered country. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 9. Exploration of the disordered country. Undoubtedly, the stone chair is a throne, and as long as one sits on it, a portion of the disorderly country will submit to Hobart. Hobart watched the figure struggling in the pool and said to himself, unless you have my permission, you won't come up with anything in this life. He sat on the stone throne and pondered for a while, then had some thoughts on the origin of this figure. The figure may be a concrete manifestation of the curse in the bloodline of the Heller family. The evidence is that every time he hears the screams of a figure, he falls into endless madness. Before this, the disorderly country had been providing him with some protection, so not every time he could hear the shouts of figures. But because he had no special connection with the disorderly country before, the protection of him by the disorderly country was very limited. Thinking of this, Hobart breathed a sigh. If his guess was correct, then going out of the disorderly country this time would not have the painful madness. If he could keep stuffing that figure in the pool in the future, perhaps the curse on himself would disappear. Is that just right? Hobart muttered to himself, even if the disorderly country cannot be like the Source Fortress, it can attract people to build an online sales platform that can suppress the curse of my family, and it can still be considered as not losing the face of the Source. He really wants to leave the disorderly country now to confirm his guess, but he also thinks that since he has arrived, it's better to explore first. Firstly, there is the stone throne, and Hobart feels the closest connection between himself and the throne. However, it seems that his control is only near the throne and can extend up to a pool of water, but not even further away. Hobart looked up at the clock tower hanging in the sky, and he could feel that the clock tower, or rather the giant bell inside, was as special as a throne. But now he couldn't go up to the sky and climb that clock tower. Hobart speculated that he might have to wait until the middle sequence before he could control that clock tower. Then Hobart thought that the stone throne was too ordinary and had no authority at all. He tried to change the shape of the throne, as he had guessed, and could change its shape according to his imagination. For example, after a moment of contemplation, the stone throne turned into a circular chair. Hobart pondered whether to turn it into the Emperor's dragon chair in costume TV dramas. But the style of the dragon chair is not compatible with the world he is in, so it's better to think of a Western fantasy-style seat. So he thought of the Iron Throne, the throne in Song of Ice and Fire, symbolizing the supreme authority of the king. Hobart's mind turned, and the throne under his buttocks became over 10 meters high. A throne made of iron swords was cast, and there were steps made of sharp swords in front of the throne. Hobart seemed to be sitting among thorny swords. Hobart nodded in satisfaction, which gave him a hint of a throne. Then he turned his gaze to the pool in front of him, where two starry clusters of light were emitting white light. Hobart tried to approach them, and they indeed drifted to the side of the throne. And the vast majority of other stars are still white clusters of varying sizes, completely beyond the control of Hobart. Hobart estimated that he may need to be promoted before he can control more stars. First, he went to see two stars that he could control. He chose one of them and then invested his spiritual power in it. Then he saw a middle-aged man in bed. Hobart had an impulse to cover his face and quickly withdrew his attention. He didn't expect to see such an exciting scene when he first used the power of the Land of Chaos. Based on his feelings, Hobart realized that he couldn't pull a person's star spirit body into the Land of Chaos like attending a tarot meeting, but he seemed to be able to converse with the other person. However, Hobart had no intention of talking to the busy middle-aged man. Even if the couple, possibly husband and wife, coughed, it would probably scare the other person psychologically. Being such an unkind person is not acceptable. After some thought, Hobart found another star cluster emitting white light and poured his attention into it. Then he saw a young man hiding in a dark jungle. At this moment, a middle-aged man with brown skin carefully searched over. When the time was ripe, the young man jumped out of the bushes and used a surprise attack to stab the man in the back. The middle-aged man with brown skin let out a restless roar, and his eyes flickered with crazy gazes, looking astonishingly imposing. But the young people seem to have not been affected at all, and the offensive has not stopped at all. Hobart judged that this should be a low-sequence, extraordinary battle, as the strength of the two people far exceeded that of ordinary people, and the surrounding trees were pushed unsteadily by the battle of the two people. Soon, the middle-aged man's injuries began to affect his combat effectiveness and showed some signs of losing control. The young man seized the opportunity, added many new knife wounds to the middle-aged man, and finally cut his throat, causing the middle-aged man to completely lose control. However, before he turned into a monster, the young man skillfully chopped off his head. After watching a good scene, Hobart found that communicating with young people at this time could easily give him a psychological shadow, and he could only talk about it later. Quickly, the extraordinary traits of middle-aged people were diluted, forming a gray-light cluster resembling a miniature brain, and even visible wrinkles on the brain. The appearance of this extraordinary trait seems to have some impression on Hobart, and he can't recall which specific path of trait it is. Watching the young people collect the spoils of war, Hobart began to summarize. Using two stars that emit white light, one can project a true vision from the disorderly country to the outside world. But now he is unable to bring people to the disorderly country. Obviously the function of the disorderly country is very different from that of the source castle. As for why these two stars with white light became his coordinates, Hobart was not very clear and could only observe more before summarizing. After these attempts, Hobart was already very tired, and he left the land of chaos and woke up from his dream. As expected, there was no sense of madness. However, Hobart did not believe that the curse of the family had disappeared like this. Even in the disorderly country, Hobart could only trap the vague figure and could not completely eliminate it. He could only be considered as suppressing the curse. Hobart didn't continue to think, he was too tired and turned around to fall asleep. Thank you to the ignorant illiterate for their 300-point reward, as well as the continuous monthly votes given to the author, and for their continuous support since the first book. Thank you for the 200-point reward from UJ. End of this chapter. Chapter 10. Legal Assistant. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 10 Legal Assistant. The next day, Hobart came to Bakeland University in high spirits, but he did not pay any attention to the class now, and always wanted to find time to explore the disordered country. It's like a child getting a beloved toy, so they always want to play with it. Especially when he came up with some solutions, he could try to actively enter the disorderly country, instead of passively entering in his sleep, which made him even more restless. Finally, in the afternoon, Hobart's two close classmates Bishop and Yulia invited him to have afternoon tea together. Hobart refused without thinking. Sorry, I need to go to the equipment room. The upper class of the entire kingdom of Rune had a habit of drinking afternoon tea, which was sold in the school cafeteria in Beckland. Hobart had been to Bishop before, and the cheapest afternoon tea set meal cost 2 souls and 3 pence. In his opinion, it is just a cup of tea and 2 plates of dim sum. Even in a middle-level restaurant outside the school, the price is enough for a steak. The key is that no one wants the cheapest set meal in school. With family conditions like Hobart, it takes 3 to 4 souls to have afternoon tea. If you want the cheapest afternoon tea, you will be laughed at by your classmates. So if Hobart doesn't go, he won't go, and he doesn't have the habit of drinking afternoon tea. Why spend this unjustified money? At this moment, Hobart remembered that his adoptive father Kristen had clearly stated that his biological father had left him a rich inheritance, but he had no intention of letting himself inherit it. Yulia smiled and said, Hobart, you've been really strange lately. You used to love drinking afternoon tea the most, and you said it could reflect a gentleman's dignity and taste. At that time, I had a mental illness, Hobart thought fiercely in his heart, but he also thought that in this world, college classmates are a very important network and still need to be maintained. So Hobart said, let me tell you too a secret of mine. My father is good friends with Barton, the barrister at the law firm of Aslan Barton. My father is planning to arrange for me to be Barton's assistant this week. I didn't tell you before because this matter wasn't finalized. Now that it's confirmed, I'm very nervous. I'm sorry, I don't have the mood to have afternoon tea. Bishop smiled and said, Hobart, this is a great opportunity. Lawyer Barton is a top-notch lawyer for Beckland, and you work as an assistant to him. If you behave well, I believe you will be eligible to go to court for at most 3 to 5 years. There are 2 types of courts in the Kingdom of Rune, one is the magistrate's court and the other is the formal court, i.e. the criminal court, also known as the noble court. Lawyers are only qualified to attend the magistrate's court, and only lawyers and barristers are qualified to attend the formal court. But formal courts are usually places where barristers meet, while ordinary lawyers are still mostly involved in public security courts. Bishop's term, court, refers to a formal court, where as long as there are sufficient connections and resources, and Hobart himself works hard enough, he can quickly become a formal lawyer in the legal sense. Hobart smiled and said, "I hope I have such good luck." Yulia said again, "But Hobart, you've been a bit strange lately. You used to praise goddesses a lot, but now at the end of the day, you don't even praise goddesses once." Kristen's family are all followers of the night goddess, and so is Hobart, but he is not used to praising the goddess in everything. And in the past month, he has prayed to the goddess more than once, hoping that he can help eliminate the madness in his body, but this fellow villager may have been too busy and has not paid attention to him. So he was too lazy to praise the goddess anymore. Hobart smiled and said, "A steadfast belief is often hidden deep within." Yulia nodded and said, "Emperor Russell's words make a lot of sense." Hobarton had an impulse to cover his face, but the Emperor did not give anyone who came later a chance to pretend to be forced. "All right, you two, I won't disturb you to have afternoon tea. When I have the first payment, I will treat you to a restaurant for dinner. It's a deal." Bishop smiled and said, "It's a deal." Hobart watched as the two classmates left before arriving at the remote equipment room. He silently recited, "Sesame opens the door," several times, but there was no response. Then, he used Kristen's meditation to put himself in a state of emptiness, without establishing any connection with the disorderly country. So he began using the third method, taking a step and saying, "Blessing the Xianhuang Immortal Lord, blessing the Xianhuang Heavenly Lord, blessing the Xianhuang God, blessing the Xianhuang Heavenly Lord." After reciting these 4 incantations, Hobart's gaze was engulfed by the black tide. Before he could struggle, he saw the iron throne he had designed. Looking back, he came in from the black pool, and the blurry figure that had been locked in the pool before was still in its original place. Success. The disorderly country, and Yuan Bao, are the same password. Immediately, Hobart realized that the land of chaos was previously sealed by the heavenly sovereign, so entering the source castle could also avoid the heavenly sovereign's seal and enter the land of chaos. As soon as Klein arrived in this world, he established a subtle connection with the source castle, while as soon as Hobart arrived in this world, he established a subtle connection with the disordered country. This is a binding from fate to the star spirit body or soul, which is also the key to entering the source material. After understanding this point and finding a way to actively enter the disorderly country, Hobart left. After all, he is currently at school and cannot guarantee that there will be no classmates or teachers to disturb the remote equipment room. In the afternoon after school, Butler Walker came to help Hobart handle his leave procedures. Hobart informed several mentors of his new developments and hoped to write letters to them for help when encountering difficulties in the future. Faced with such a promising student, the mentors are certainly willing to agree to exchange letters with Hobart. After bidding farewell to Bishop and Yulia again, Walker escorted Hobatra to the Aslan Barton law firm and met Barrister Barton Stanny. This law firm was co-founded by Aslan and Barton, both of whom are famous barristers in Beckland and have resolved many disputes for the nobility and wealthy. Barton is in his 40s, with light yellow hair and dark blue eyes that resemble the gaze of an eagle, full of sharpness. He said, "I used to be comrades in arms with your father, and I know the original intention behind your father sending you here." At this point, Barton picked up a folder from his desk and said, "This is a case without any suspense. Tomorrow, you will go to the sheriff's court as the plaintiff's lawyer." Finally, he said with great depth, "Take a deep understanding of how to be a good lawyer." Hobart expressed gratitude while thinking to himself, is role-playing so popular? Kristen became a brigadier general in his 30s and must have known how to play, but to his surprise, Barton also knew that this barrister was definitely an extraordinary person. At this point, Hobart suddenly burst into laughter, possibly because Kristen had told Barton the way of acting. Then he sighed in his heart, the wheels of fate are rolling in, and in the blink of an eye, I am already a legal assistant. End of this chapter.